Well, Pete and I are live from our Pershore Pinhole Quilting Showroom, and we welcome everybody who is either watching this live or on catch-up, and we share that catch-up on Facebook and on YouTube. And it's great if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's going to be a really good way for us to keep communicating and teaching our customers and potential customers more about long arm quilting and also more about what we do here. You know, later on in this year, we're hoping obviously to open up. We're opening up our showroom for visitors, for demonstrations, just one-on-one type of demonstrations that we would traditionally have done. And we're really looking forward to opening up from the 12th of April. So if you're interested in a long arm, if you want to talk to us about coming for a demonstration, just either give us a call or send us an email, fill out our form on our website, and we'd be very happy to have you visit our showroom. We normally spend probably a couple of hours just taking people through the basics of long arm quilting, but also giving them the opportunity to try out the machines that we've got here. And we've got some lovely machines. The Handy Quilter range is quite extensive, both stationary sit-down machines and the stand-up like the Amara that I'm by today. We've got the full-size Studio 2 frame set up here, but also some demonstration teaching frames. So when we run our workshops for those people who've purchased a Handy Quilter, then we're normally able to have one person per machine. That's what we did in September last year when we opened up, just a bit briefly. And it was a great opportunity for us to be able to teach those people who'd recently purchased a long arm. Education and training is a really important part of what we do, obviously. But the other thing is inspiration. And I just wanted to share with you one of the things that is quite important to me is I think, and to a lot of our customers, you know, we have some fantastic quilt artists and other type of textile artists within the long arm community. And it's not always something that's very obvious. In fact, I was doing a Zoom demonstration for a lady called Tina down in London earlier this week. And it got me thinking about design and the inspirations that we have. And in fact, I don't know whether you can see, but behind us here was a piece that is done on just a single layer of fabric, which is organza. And it's done with just some thread and then overpainted to create this lovely, beautiful sort of tree in winter. That was done by Deborah Harwood.
Just lift it so that people can see how it's created.
It's in a box frame, so that's my hand behind it there.
So it's finest organza with some very thick black thread to do the thread painting.
And it was interesting talking with Tina, who didn't appreciate that long arms could be used in that way. And it was in conversation with other artists that she suddenly realized that they were using long arms. What's a long arm? So she's going to come up as soon as she can and visit the showroom and be looking at either a Capri or a Sweet 16. And it's fantastic because those machines are really beefy machines. She's used to a sort of industrial type of machine, and that's exactly what our machines are. She does faces, she does drawing effectively with the needle. It's quite impressive, some of the things that she's got on her TikTok and Instagram. So I just wanted to mention to you about how, you know, these machines aren't just for quilting. I think, you know, it's quite extensive, the range of people who purchase these machines. And in fact, we're just, I've been having some email correspondence with one of the companies that we sold a large long arm, the old style Fusion with Pro Stitcher on it, on a gallery frame, to a company that does it produces the dividers in offices or in showrooms, like you go into a Porsche garage, as you do. Not everybody just walks into a Porsche garage, but if you did, you might see some screens in there that have got the Porsche logo and cross hatching on a polypropylene base. And that might well have been done on one of the Handy Quilters using Pro Stitcher. So that's what they do. They do screens for offices. And by using it in that sort of industrial capacity, it just shows, and they've been using that for, I think, nearly 10 years. And it's still going strong. So fantastic. one of the many, many uses of these. But for most of us, of course, it's all about quilting. And inspiration comes in many forms. So I was doing some preparation for this session and writing my blog post earlier this week. When was it? Was it only yesterday? Gosh, it's been a busy week. I can tell you it's been a busy week. We packed so much into a day. I can't believe it was only yesterday. And I was watching Antiques Roadshow, and it was coming from Windermere. And there was a lady on it who'd got a beautiful painting by an artist. I'm going to look up his name. Anwar Jalal Shemza is his name. He's a Pakistani-born artist, and he lived in the UK. He lived in Stafford, actually. And he was her teacher. And he'd done this painting, and I think she'd purchased it. I forget the actual story, because I was so drawn by the painting that I just ditched the program and started Googling Anwar Jalal Shamsa. And on my blog post this week, I've shared with you that original little sort of screen of the BBC program, but also then started Googling and looking at his other inspirational works. And it's so sort of classically, I say classically, it's not classic, it's modern style painting, 50s, 60s style painting and print. And it is absolutely amazing for sort of inspiration from modern quilting. So take a look at the blog post. Every week I post on the blog and something about either the people that I've met, some little snippets from various places. And you never know where your inspiration is going to come from. So being mindful of the fact that it's just out there. If you're looking at images, color, if you're that kind of person who's a creative person, then that inspiration comes from lots of places. So, just wanted to share that with you. And I put a book on there that Mary Palmer, she worked with us at the Festival of Quilts in previous years, and Mary won the Handy Quilter Best in Show award for the last show that was on, which was 2019. And I spoke to Mary when I was planning a design class that we ran here a couple of years ago, and I was getting some sort of thoughts of the design process from Mary as part of my research into the class, and also spoke with Hilda van Schaardenberg, our Handy Quilter ambassador. And Mary directed me to a fantastic book which is called Design, A Lively Guide by Stephen Imoni. It's on my blog post, so you have a look at it on there. It's no longer in print, but it's such a really great book, and it encompasses design in its many forms for those people who are doing not only textiles, but also pottery, ceramics, whatever. So, getting things from other art forms is always an interesting concept, and there are so many different ways that we can get our inspiration. So anyway, I just wanted to talk to you about that, because I don't have time at the moment to do design, because we've just been really, really busy. I think it's fair to say, Pete, is it not, that we've had our busiest ever couple of weeks? And I think it's part and parcel of how many quilts are being made, but they need quilting.
It's true. And we haven't had a day off for a while, but we're going to take a few days off next week.
We are,
actually. It's Lizzie's birthday.
Oh, yeah. Who is it? Fancy you remembering, Pete. Because you can't forget, because...
I'd be in trouble otherwise.
Because my birthday, not that I'm expecting birthday wishes from all of our customers, but it's on St. Patrick's Day, which historically has been, for me, a fantastic day to have as my birthday, because it's an automatic party. And when I lived on Grand Cayman, the St. Patrick's Day was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because there are so many Irish who are traveling around the world, and it was an absolute shoo-in, and I just assumed it was for me. Okay.
Let's just say hello to a lot of people here. There are a lot of people on.
Great.
Common theme is it's very, very windy here in the UK, right across the country. But we've got a number of people here from Northern Ireland. Joyce is up bright and early in Boston,
hello, Joyce.
Massachusetts, as usual.
Fantastic.
Laurence in France, I'm pleased to see you.
Oh, how fantastic. Now, Laurence was the last customer that I travelled to abroad before lockdown. It was February last year. And I went over on Eurostar and installed Laurence's Infinity Pro Stitcher and had a lovely time with Laurence and her lovely little doggies. I've forgotten their names, but they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful, little terriers, little Yorkies. Yep.
And we've got, who else we got? We've got Gail. Nice to see you here, Gail. We just installed your machine this week.
Oh, yes.
Beautiful
Hi,
space
Gail.
for your frame. It worked
Yes.
absolutely perfectly.
Yes, love that space. Great use of space.
Carol Bealey says that she's enjoying using the Magna Glide bobbins that she tried.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so the Magna Glide, that's one of the things that we've done on a previous Facebook Live. And I think, it's been really good to sort of pull together some of those things that, we know about, but it's been hard to communicate and get that information to customers. So glad to hear you're enjoying those, Carol.
And we've got Michaela in Germany. Now, Michaela, if you haven't seen it, you must have a look at Michaela's quilt that she posted on Long Arm Learning Curve this week, which is absolutely amazing. The work you're doing, Michaela, is incredible.
And just to mention that for those people who don't yet, I'm going to say yet, have a handy quilter, Long Arm Learning Curve is a closed group. It's for our handy quilter owners around the world, admin by myself and Linda Jackson and Nell, who are, Nell's one of our customers, and Linda's our handy quilter ambassador and educator. The three of us admin it, but actually it attracts handy quilter owners from around the world. And as soon as you get your machine in the UK, I send you the link to it, invite you to join. And so welcome to all of those customers who've joined in the last few weeks, since we went into lockdown. And we'll be sending you some more information about some other things that we're planning for you if you haven't yet taken up your foundation workshop.
Talking of design, Sue Dutton, who's recently got a Moxie, she says, have you seen the buildings in Florence? They're covered inside and out with quilt blocks, particularly the Duomo and the Baptistry. Now, I've seen them. Those buildings are incredible, but yes, they are full of design inspiration if you're a quilter as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, Christine Porter, that we worked with to do Handy Quilter Academy a few years ago, Christine Porter actually has written a book on quilt designs from Italy on the basis of some of those incredible places. And you just look down on the floor and it's a quilt design.
And we've got Carlos joining us from Mexico. Morning, Carlos.
Good morning.
Gosh, you're up early too.
Mexico, fabulous.
Right.
Welcome. Well, that was the chatty bit. It was a chatty bit, but I think it's an important thing to sort of welcome everybody because, this group has given us a great opportunity during this rather unusual period of our lives to, get out to our customers, even though you can't get out. We're coming to you, and it's a fantastic thing that we've got. Our showroom here is we recognise it is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to move between these different machines. It's a pretty unique setup that we have here, and we're very thankful that we have it and that we've got all of our lovely customers that can come and visit when we open up again. Information on that, of course, will be communicated to our customers when it's possible. Even though we're able to do the showroom visits from the 12th of April, we can't actually do the classes yet. I had a look at the guidance, and just for our own security and safety, etc., we felt, and also that of our customers, of course, but actually it's really important that when we do so, that it is in a safe environment. So it's likely to be a post-June. During June, potentially. We'll let you know. Depends on the UK government, of course. Now, some of the things that I wanted to cover with you today are some aspects of stand-up quilting, but also I'll mention, actually, can I mention that? The wonderful, for our stand-up and stationary customers, Sweet 16 and Capri owners, as well as our movable customers, this box of the Deco Bob, which is an 80 weight polyester thread. It's pre-wound on plastic bobbins. It's M-size bobbins. We have put together some selection packs of these. This is the second one that we've put together. It's now available on our website. It comes in a bobbin box, and it's 10 different colours and 3 of each, so which is usually kind of enough to do a lot of projects, but at least it gives you an insight into the kind of colours that you can get in that range. And we've put in there a selection that we think could be quite useful. We hope that will be very useful for you. Okay, so on Facebook and on the blog post this week was the question and on our email, to float or not to float. And it's a question that comes up quite a lot when we do our foundation workshop. So I wanted to cover it with you today. those people who are new to long arm quilting will not have a clue probably what it means, and it's usually something that comes up after you've had your machine a little while, but wanted to give you some insight because plenty of you haven't been able to come, as I say, on the foundation workshop. Now, this frame here that we've got is the Studio 2 frame, and the Studio 2 frame has this drop down section at the front. So this here, we've got it in what's called clear view. This is a movable section. On the old style Studio frame, that used to be fixed and it was in what was called standard load. Now I covered this beautifully last week on Facebook. I did it in an impeccable way that made it absolutely clear. No, I didn't, but I did hopefully make it clear in the end. So this is the Studio 2 frame. We have a 4-rail frame. And what that means is, like the loft frame as well, that we don't have to baste. We don't have to baste our quilt, and of course everybody loves not having to baste their quilt because it is probably one of the least popular aspects of the quilting process. Sorry, Pete, go ahead. I thought you were saying.
It's okay. There was a question, but it's been answered by other people that are on the forum. So
okay. This is what we like. We like having customers who answer the questions for us.
So thank you to Derek and to Linda for answering it.
Two very experienced people, and yeah, you soon learn on Long Arm Learning Curve who are the people that really know what they're talking about. And we have some amazingly qualified customers and educators on Long Arm Learning Curve that can help customers when we're not available, which is wonderful. So this is the Studio 2 frame. We've got ratchets, we've got cogs and stoppers at this end. You can actually have it set up to have it on the left-hand side if you wish, but most customers have it set up on this side. This, just let's identify these rails. This is the take-up rail. This is where your quilt gets put onto. As it gets quilted between here and here, you will wind your quilt on and the finished quilt ends up over here. This is called the idler bar or lazy bar. Is there another name that you call it, Pete? No?
Dead bar.
Dead bar. He calls it dead bar. I have heard other people say dead bar. I call it idler bar. And idler because it doesn't do anything. Actually it does. It keeps everything consistent and the level of the quilt consistent to the machine. As this builds up, otherwise if this was close to the bed of the machine, you'd have to change the height of this end because this would be getting bigger and bigger and you'd have less space to quilt above the machine. So this 4-rail system is a really good way to have a setup. Now I haven't loaded this particularly well and I want to demonstrate to you why. This is the quilt backing and it gets put onto the quilt take-up rail, and I have done 2 different methods to show you. This one is pinned, okay, so the far end of my quilt backing is pinned to the cloth leader. Don't wash your cloth leaders, just saying, Lorraine. One of our customers asked about washing the cloth leaders this week, and it does say on the outside of the bag, do not wash. So we don't recommend it. This here is the other end of the quilt backing, and I've actually attached this using a method of loading which uses something called leader grips. So it has like a little insert that goes into here and then a plastic goes on the top of it. I'll show you when we get to there because I will be unwinding this so I can show it to you. This is the where we rest the rail. So this is called a cradle, pole cradle. It's where we rest this rail when we're not using it, or this one when we're not using it. And this has the quilt top on it. Now normally we would attach the quilt top to this and we would pin it just like we did the top of the backing. However, I would like to talk with you about floating, and I'm going to cover that after I've done this section on the backing. So let's say that we've loaded our backing. I've pinned it here and I've got it on the leader grips here. What if it's not perfect? And there's a very good video that you can watch, and I'm going to share it on the blog post with a link to the YouTube, where Jamie Wallen covers this excellent technique, and it's a technique that he showed on one of the Handy Quilter Live sessions of how you get rid of an uneven an uneven loading of your quilt backing. So say you've got a bit too much fullness on one side compared to the other. Let me just take that bit off.
So for you newer frame owners, it's really important to have an even backing fabric loaded onto your frame.
Absolutely. And in fact, it did come up with one of our new Amara customers, and I'm sure that she'll be watching this. Getting tucks and pleats is exactly what we don't want. So this is one of the reasons why we're covering this. So, where customers have contacted us and said, how do I get around this problem? This is where these videos are going to be hopefully very useful to you. So say I've got a bit of fullness on one side compared to the other, and this isn't like it's tight over there and it's not tight here. This is all baggy and that is tight. I would normally, by the way, this is just one of our sample pieces, but I would normally take off the selvage, because the selvage has a different strength than the rest of the quilt fabric.
Georgie is indeed watching avidly, she said.
It is for you. It's for you. Well, it's for everybody else too, but I think it's important, isn't it, that we can learn from the experiences when things don't go right. So we've got fullness here, we've got a tight left-hand side. So what we've done is we've got a hand wheel on this side. Now we've actually added an additional hand wheel on this side. This is an optional hand wheel, and Peter's fitted this to this side of the quilt frame onto this rail so that we can easily wind this backing backwards and forwards. So this enables us to sort of just slacken this off, and what I'll do is I'll take up this. So imagine that this would be like what I'd be doing later when I'm quilting it, obviously. But by doing this in advance, potentially I get rid of, there's the leader grips. So I just wanted to show you that this here, because I mentioned this on a Facebook post a few weeks ago, and I think some people were still confused. It has like a center core, and then you put the fabric over that center core that's within the quilt leader, and then you clamp that on top.
So there is, within the cloth leader, there's a sleeve, and within the sleeve,
so imagine this
fitted a cylindrical rod.
Oh, let me get the proper one, the blue one.
And a plastic clamp clamps the fabric over that cylindrical rod and therefore holds it in place without pinning.
Yeah. So this goes into there's a little sleeve in the cloth leader, and then that and then your fabric, your quilt top effectively in this case, would go over the top of it. Have I got a bit of fabric? Not handy. And then that goes over the top of that. So that holds the fabric in place. That's what I've done here. Okay? Getting through lots and lots of different things here. Now, the reason that this is sort of skew-if is probably because I didn't put this on square, which I did obviously deliberately for the purposes of this demonstration. However, what I'll do now is I want to go back this way. So I'm going to wind this and let this go. Let me just take that tool. I want to take that tool tray off.
So there's an alternative but similar system called red snappers. So the red snappers and leader grips are the two main systems like that.
And then back again. Now we're nearly back to the beginning, so we can now assess how much of that fullness has gone. And look at that.
Put your clamp on.
Put the clamp on, put that clamp on.
So there we go. So the fabric is taut on this side, and it's now also taut on this side, just by rolling that backing fabric backwards and forwards a couple of times, which of course makes it a lot easier when you've got the second hand wheel.
Yep,
Saves
absolutely.
The hand strain, as Nicole has mentioned.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're using your wrist to turn this bar.
Now I will do this one more time, because what I noticed was this had just got shifted out. So I'm just going to put this back on one more time. What we're looking for on this rail here is take that off, is that this doesn't get like a piece of badly rolled wrapping paper. So I'm just going to smooth that as I go.
Seems that my microphone's not working for some reason.
Is mine working?
Everything's on, but my microphone's obviously not working properly.
Okay.
It's all over to you.
Uh-oh. Right, now when I turn this over and I've got the start of my backing fabric here, what I want to do is, I've got my Mara, lovely Mara, and there are various ways that I can put the plumb line in for taking my wadding and backing up to this plumb line. So I'm going to lay on the wadding next. So that covers the backing and evening out the backing. What I would like to do next is talk about fluting. So at this point, it almost feels like there should be that float on backing music. But floating in this case is all about the quilt top. When we put our wadding on, normally we would have attached our quilt top to this rail. So I'm going to pop my wadding in between the two rails here, because this is how we do it with the clear view.
It seems as if some people can hear me and some people can't, which is rather unusual. I've known people to have selective hearing when I've been talking to them previously.
I was about to say
that's for different reasons.
To a technique that I use. Okay. Right, I just let that off a bit. I just don't want to hit any pins or anything. So I've made sure, a bit too close still. I want to make sure that the pins are just beyond. I want to show you a technique.
Okay, seems to be working now.
Good.
All I did was switch it off and switch it back on again.
Yeah, now that's a common troubleshooting technique, Pete. Right, so I've laid on my wadding. And when we're attaching the quilt top to the backing, we want a straight line. We want a plumb line, a straight line, a reference line, whatever you like to call it. There are 3 different ways that we can create that straight line. I can use the actual rail here so that the quilt machine is running against this rail, like so. Must have something on the back there.
Question in from somebody who spotted the fact that our ruler base looks as if it's made out of wood. It isn't made out of wood, it's just a brand new ruler base where we haven't taken off the brown protective paper, but it's just the standard clear Perspex ruler base underneath.
Yeah, I should take that off really. I'll take that off. I don't need it on. I was just doing some ruler work, demoing rulers.
And Derek's answered the question as well on mine.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Demo. It's actually clear. Right. So that's one way I can use the actual rail, very quick, very easy to do and consistent, to create my straight reference line. The other way I can do it, I can use a channel lock, and the channel locks are the handy little, Pete's just going to get me one because I thought I had one in my, got so many bits and pieces. Oh, there we go. See, we did this without practicing as well. We can put this on the wheels of the carriage, and what we want to do is we want to stop it from doing forward, back, and just go side to side. So you can either go around the back of the machine, or you can reach forward.
So Lindsay says she has the original frame, so this is looking a bit weird. Yes, with the original studio frame, Lindsay, you would be loading your fabric on the opposite poles, but for new customers this is the way that we recommend it, because this is possible on the Studio 2 frame.
Let me just move that up as well. Yeah, so now I've got the channel lock on. I can't move it forward back in the Y direction. I can only move it side to side, so that will create my reference line. And the third way that I can do it is because I've got Pro Stitcher on here, I can put a horizontal channel lock on, and now I can only move it side to side. Vertical means I can only move it forward and back. So I want the horizontal channel lock on, and that will enable me to do a nice straight plumb line.
So Val says that the bobbles on the joining pieces in the rail can get in the way sometimes of the machine.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that those bobbles, as you say, Val, aren't in the way, and also the ones on the idler bar shouldn't be facing down. So these are the bobbles that Val's talking about. These are the joining bits, because there's a sort of piece of joining metal in there holding the rails together. And if they're pointing downwards, you hear it sort of hitting the base of the machine. So you don't really want that.
So you just need to move that top rail just a fraction, Val, and then it won't hit the machine.
Yeah. You don't realise it until you probably hit it, you know. Okay, so needle up, needle down. And at this point, I would change my settings so that I've got a long basting stitch, something like a 6 or 7 stitches.
Stuart Hillard. Morning, Stuart. How are you?
Hi, Stuart. Okay, so when I get to the end, I can just pull it a little bit further and just chop that off. Make sure I don't unplug this. There's an additional hazard for being on Facebook Live. There's wires that you can get caught around various things. Okay, so we've done our plumb line. Now, to float or not to float. Is that okay? You happy with that, Pete?
Yeah.
To float or not to float, that is the question. Floating basically means that we don't put the quilt top onto this front cloth leader. We literally just have it over here, and we can clamp it with, we've got 2 different types of clamps. Super clamp, and these are called
Easy grasp clamps.
Easy grasp clamps. And so instead of having it rolled around here, as we progress, we just take the clamps off and reassess it and make sure it's all nicely squared. By attaching it to this plumb line to begin with, we know it's all squared up and square to the quilt frame. The question is why you would do that and why you wouldn't do that. Why you would do it is potentially it's quicker. It means that you're only having to attach it there, and then as you go down, you're attaching the quilt to the backing and the quilt wadding by doing a long basting stitch down the sides. There are some people who will make sure that it's all square as it goes down by using either a tape measure, a zero-centered tape measure if they're sort of putting their quilt in the center of the quilt, or I've seen some people, I don't have necessarily anything that I can demonstrate this with, but if you imagine, I was going to find something actually, but I haven't done so. If you imagine if you had your quilt top attached and you took a straight line with some cord or some bungees and attached it to the quilt leader here and around the idler bar, and as you went down you just made sure that that was in alignment with the quilt top, on both left and right hand sides, that would also mean that you could line it up. So I'm sure that because we've got lots and lots of experienced quilters on here, we will get some other examples of why you might float your quilt, which is exactly what I wanted. When you would not want to float your quilt, or when you might find it better not to. When we had Mary Beth Crapel over from the States teaching on Pro Stitcher, Mary Beth said she would recommend that if you're doing computerized quilting, that generally you should attach your quilt top. And I think that's probably the case. I think that it gives you, it's like you're doing all your preparation in advance. All of the issues that you might have been resolved before your quilt has been revealed. Otherwise, there's more time taken to sort of check and assess. And you can always have that extra marker with a line that you take down there, the cord, and make sure that that's all nicely in alignment. So go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, a few questions coming in, so I think it's worth covering those. Nicole says that on her Amara, the machine hits the backstops before the rail, and that is actually the case. It is actually the backstops. Representing the back point, rather than
or
the
the
rail.
handlebar things if you've got them very low.
It does depend on the positioning of your handlebars, exactly right.
On the Avanti, you actually use the machine, and on the Simply.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it depends on the machine.
Leslie's saying when she bastes, she gets very uneven stitch sizes. That is not normal, Leslie, so we need to talk to you about that, because the basting stitch on the Amara is also stitch regulated, so they should be very even in the same way as the smaller stitches, so we'll deal with that separately.
Yep.
Belle says the Easy Grasp clamps are very tight and it's very hard to get them on and off. And that is certainly true, particularly when they're brand new.
Yes, that's true. We've covered this on some of our foundation workshops because, like a lot of people, hands are not as strong as they used to be. So when you're putting an Easy Grasp on, I would suggest putting it on one side and then the other. And when you take it off, pull one side and then the other. Don't try and put the whole thing on in one go. So do it one side and then the other. And the same with this one. With this super leader, you just put it on like one side, and then to remove it, lift up like this, and then that should easily come away. But yeah, I think
those Easy Grasp clamps are extremely tight. And Liz is only putting it here over over the leader. If you've got a lot of fabric on there, they're even tighter, of course. But if you put one end on first and then push the rest down, that's the best way of doing it.
It is. And we did it in a foundation workshop that Abigail and I were running last year or year before with someone who'd really struggled. And we went through that technique and she didn't have a problem again. So hopefully that will help you.
Yeah.
Okay.
A couple of other very good questions. Is there a size limit to the piece you can float, says Elizabeth?
There isn't a size limit, but I would say the bigger your quilt top, the more that you'll want to attach it first rather than float it. There's a lot of fabric to manipulate if you're not attaching it.
Yes, although I note that Linda Jackson, who's our Handy Quilter ambassador and a world-winning quilter, says that she floats 80% of the time. And Linda's doing some very big quilts. So
yeah, that's really useful to know. Thank you, Linda.
And next question, do you need the clamps the whole width of the quilt?
It's probably a good idea.
Actually, Liz, for most quilts, a single super clamp and a pair of the small clamps
most people have, isn't it?
Is sufficient.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I think I would start with the super clamp, which is this one, which comes for the studio. Oh, shall I mention about this before I go into putting that on? That we've got the Studio 2 and the Studio frame use these ones, which are designed for studio frames, and the Gallery, which is for our Forte and Infinity customers, use bigger ones. The difference is that the Studio one comes in, just stuff myself. A Studio one comes in a single pack, a pack of one. This Gallery one comes in 2 to a pack, but I think the price is the same, relatively the same. Pro rata, yeah. And the Gallery frame Easy Grasp quilt clamps are called large. So
yeah. Very important this, because you need the right ones for your frame. So the Studio frame has bars that are 2 inches in diameter, and the Gallery frame has bars that are 3 inches in diameter. So the clamps don't fit from one to the other.
Yeah. So once I've got my plumb line, I then lay over my quilt top, which would not have a big crease down the middle. This comes straight off the bolt. And then what I normally do is 5 or 6 inches away from that edge, I put in some pins at a rakish angle. So it just means that they don't tend to move then.
So yes, if you've got the electromagnetic channel locks or the Pro Stitcher, you can use the vertical channel lock to keep things straight at the edges.
Good point.
The tip that Liz was stating was for those people who don't have either of those devices.
Yeah.
And then the piece of cord can come in useful for lining things up.
And then what we do is we baste our quilt top to our wadding and backing in this area that will be covered by our binding once our quilt is beautifully finished. So that, if that's all on there, that looks good. That looks good. Perfect. Right, then I just do a wiggly line.
So Linda's confirmed that she floats all of her large quilts.
Okay.
So a couple of other questions here. Yes, this is something we needed to cover.
Yeah.
The loft frame has different size bars again. The bars on the loft frame are 1.5 inches. At the moment, we don't have clamps available for the loft frame, but Handy Quilter are producing them, and we should have them in a couple of months' time. So they will be available, and you will be able to float in the same way on the loft frame once those clamps are in stock. Another question, Liz, why are you doing a wiggly line?
Yes, good question. I didn't say why, because I wanted somebody to ask me. Thank you. So I'm doing a wiggly line, and actually it came out of a conversation with Kimmy Bruner, who's a Handy Quilter ambassador in the States, that came and did our academy a few years ago. And she said, and I think this is true, that if you have any fullness in your quilt, by doing a wiggly line, the fullness will just ease its way off the quilt and won't end up with a fold or a ruck. And I reckon that's true. I would be interested in any comments or feedback from those people who have done that. But that's why I do it. And also, it's more fun when you're teaching it to say, oh, and do a wiggly line. No, it's mainly because of Kimmy. And then we can do a straight line on each side within the binding. I'm going to put my gears back on. And again, I could use my channel lock. Okay, take that off, and then now one of our customers, very, very good quilter, what she does, and I think this is quite an interesting one, just give it you as a thought you might want to do. She's doing a lot of free motion quilting, and what she wants to know is how far she can quilt once she's put this basted quilt sandwich on. And so what she does is she does a basting line. She goes down, and then she does a basting line all the way along to the other side, and then goes up this side. And I thought that's actually quite interesting, isn't it? Because what that does is, without marking or measuring anything, like on this one, I could actually have gone all the way down to here. I could have put in that line, and then I've got that nice long stitch. I can just I've taken it out at the end, and I've got a nice long stitch that tells me exactly how far I can go. And again, quite straight.
So some people are using wiggly lines, some people aren't. Linda doesn't, but it's like all these things. Find what works for you. Some people prefer one thing, some people prefer another. But if you know the options, then you can try them out and decide for yourself.
Yep. Okay, I'm just going to trim that off, and we are there, I think, on the floating. So there's a couple of other things that I want to mention as well about floating and attaching quilts, because what if you've got a very small piece? What about if you've got something like this piece that I started with Callie Klein when she came over and still haven't finished? I've put a different backing fabric on it. Actually, no, I did this over at Salt Lake City, and I've done my feathers. I've put an additional backing fabric on it because I wasn't happy with the quality of the one that we'd got. It makes it look like it was sort of punctured. I really didn't like it. And the way that I've attached this is I've put some really, some sample fabric from demos that we've done to the top and bottom. And the way that I'll attach this to my frame is I can just put it on here. I could put it on like that onto the idler bar, and I could have it just hanging down. Or I could put this, and I can put the super leader on the front, like so. Where's my super leader gone?
So if you have a smaller piece,
I could have pinned this on. I could have. What I actually did, I stitched this. I pinned it as well, but I stitched it so it's held in place, and then I've used the quilt clamps on there and there. Also, if you've got a sample very similar to what you're using in your main quilt and you want to test your stitches and you haven't got enough space at the edge like I haven't here, then instead I can put a quilt sandwich on and then I can just attach that. It can go around the idler bar. Oops. Put that on there. I can go around the idler bar. I've just pinned it around the idler bar. As I move forward, that just stays there. Nothing happens to it because it's on the idler bar. And then I can either just drape it over the front, lean on it, do my test stitching, lift it up, check the stitches are good on the underside, and away I go. So that's how I would do my test stitches. That's what I did when I started the session today. There's my little test to make sure all my stitches are sewing beautifully before I went live on Facebook, because that would be a sensible thing to do. Okay, so that's a couple of little tips there on how to do practicing. I think that was it. There wasn't anything else on.
So you can do multiple small pieces at the same time.
Oh yes, that was the other thing. Thank you. So the other thing is, say I've got lots of these, or I had, and there's a video on YouTube of doing table mats. I put the backing on, I put the wadding, multiple layers of wadding, and then I laid on top my table mat, and I did 6 at a time. But on the Kitty, and I'm going to forget her last name, but she's a night quilter on Instagram, and Joe Avery, who's our Moxie mentor, doing some, having a chat with Joe yesterday, and she'd seen the quilt, which I'd also watched actually, about how Kitty had got, so Kitty's new to quilting, she's got a new Moxie like Joe has, and she'd got 3 different quilt tops, and she wanted to stitch them without having to each time base them on. So what she did was, on her sewing machine, she put some joining strips on and actually made it into a single piece of fabric, so that when she loaded it, she only had to do 1 baste, and then she could just quilt all 3 without having to go around it. Because on this one, for example, I have stitched 2 sides. I've yet to stitch down here and along there, but I would need to do that to make sure it's nicely held. And that brings me on to something else as well that I can mention about moving on and distortion, because when you're quilting, we've covered what happens if you've got the sort of uneven backing, and we did the Jamie Wallen technique going forward and back, forward and back. That was great. When we move on, it's important to make sure that your backing fabric is not baggy. Otherwise, you might end up with some rucks and tucks and pleats and things on the back. But the other thing is that when you're using Pro Stitcher and you're using a reference point for drag and drop, and those people with Pro Stitcher will know what that means, there's a very good Handy Quilter Live that I watched recently. It's got Chris Souza on it, and he's got some fabulous little tips and techniques for doing edge to edge. He's done like 400 quilts last year on his Pro Stitcher, so he knows a thing or two about speeding stuff up. Well worth a watch if you've got Pro Stitcher. Use a reference point in the center of your quilt when you're moving on, doing drag and drop. But the other thing is, and Joy, who's recently had her Amara with Pro Stitcher, what she found was she was not using her side clamps enough. They were sort of a bit too slack, and I think also perhaps, Georgie, that might have been the case for yourself too. So when we're not talking about drum tight, we're not doing embroidery frame, sort of tightening it up and tightening it up, tightening up. We're just doing consistency. If your backing fabric is the same all the way down your quilt, you won't have to adjust those. Once you've got them in place, they will stay the same, and you can just attach them. If you don't have much space at the side of your quilt, you do not want to hit those clamps with your machine, because that's another customer this week, And so you need to attach a piece of fabric to the side and move it as you move down the quilt. So don't have those clamps too tight to your quilt. I think that's it.
Okay, yeah. Couple of points.
Okay.
People loving your idea of this sample piece of fabric for doing your tension testing, Liz.
Okay,
I think it's a great idea too, because you can just move that along that
yep.
rail. There was a question about who did the Pro Stitcher video.
Chris Souza.
Chris Souza. He's a handy quilter educator.
He is.
Wayne has already answered that. Thank you, Wayne.
Great.
Okay, that's it.
Well, I think it's nearly... Oh, yes. Oh, we've got a special offer. We have a special offer because we've been talking about some really neat little tools and things. We've got a special offer on the hand wheel kit. Is it for both studio and gallery? Yes,
but unfortunately we only have one gallery frame hand wheel kit in stock. We're still having some issues with shipping. This week we're supposed to receive 3 huge boxes of glide thread. Only one's turned up so far. 2 are floating around in the system somewhere.
Shipping at the moment.
Shipping's a problem.
It's not easy. Studio 2 and Studio hand wheel kit on special offer. Pete?
20% off. Normally £35, now £28.
Ah, yes, £28. So that'll be on the website shortly.
It's not there yet.
It's not there yet.
It'll be there within half an hour. So make sure that the price is £28 before you place your order.
And also, we've got a deal on the composite kit. So that would be super clamp.
For studio frame.
This is studio frame. Super clamp, easy grasp, and the hand wheel kit. 20% off.
20% off the bundle.
Bundle, which is now, instead of £84, it's £67.20. So those will be on our website shortly, and that'll be under the special offers, so look out for that. I'll put a link from Facebook. So those will be on till 12 noon next week. And are we on next Saturday? We're working on Saturday, aren't we? Yes. We are having a few days off next week, so if we're not able to get back to you, if it's urgent, we will try and get back to you, but we are taking a few days off because it's St. Patrick's Day and it's my birthday. And that's it. That's as simple as that. Okay. I think it's been, well, I don't know. I hope it's been useful. I know that when I started quilting and using these long arms, there was an awful lot to learn. I hope that these kind of tips and techniques will enable you to quilt more successfully without little pleats on the back of your quilts. We don't want that. I hope that if you've got any further questions that you could put them into the comments. We look at them after the show. I say the show. After Facebook Live, and answer any questions that you might have. Plus, if you've got any questions that are appropriate for us by email, please do send them in. And it's been great to connect with everybody, and I hope you have the most wonderful week.
And thank you to Stuart and everybody else who's already wishing Liz a happy birthday, and enjoy your few days off.
Oh, that's kind. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us again.
All right.
See you next week.
Take care, everybody. Bye now.